in this time that we're in this time of pandemic, we've seen even more the conflicts that we have with each other. There seems to be more division in our lives now. We see this in how we look at not just easy things, but more difficult and pressing issues. Things like truth, race, and how we deal with this pandemic, or even if we deal with this pandemic at all. And because these are big issues, when we are looking at another, someone who may disagree with us, it becomes that much harder to love that person. We as Christians, in looking at a time like this, turn our love to God. But that love for God cannot be separated from our love of other people. That's what Jesus is trying to tell us this morning. It's what he's saying to the disciples. Because what we hear from Jesus in John this morning is him telling the disciples that if they love him, if they abide in his love, they will keep his commandments. And the commandment he gives them is this: love one another as I have loved you. Love one another as I have loved you. This is not an easy thing that Jesus is asking from us. In fact, it is a very difficult one. This idea of loving one another flies in the face of everything we know and sometimes everything that we may feel. Because that other is the one who has broken us, who has hurt and harmed us. It's the one who has betrayed us and left us feeling empty. And that makes it that much harder to love that other person. But what we hear from Jesus, what we learn in our own relationships with Jesus, is that when we stop and look at ourselves, we realize that we too have betrayed and hurt and broken others. But Jesus has loved us anyways. In calling us to love the other, what Jesus is calling us to do goes against what the world would have us do. And that's why our other readings are so important this morning. Because they show us that what God is working in this world is unique and different. In Psalm 98, we hear that God is working something new. In 1 John, we hear that the love of God coming into this world brings us to rebirth. It renews us in a deep and intimate way. And in Acts, we see Peter and the other leaders marvel at God working something different, at God working something new in the world. To love God means to love our neighbor, even when that neighbor is unlovable. And we do that because God loved us, even in the times when we are unlovable. And if you ever need a reminder of this connection between our love of God and our love of each other, just think to the beginning of our service today, when we read the two great commandments that intricately connects this idea of loving God and loving our neighbor. That these two are one and the same. We say this to start every week for this service, and it's a bookend to our previous week. And it's a reminder to us always of the call God has for us, that in loving God, we love our fellow human being as well, no matter